You ever just have one of those days where something you completely forgot existed in any way, shape, type, and form just comes back and hits you like a kick in the nuts? Well, today is one of those days. What's up, everyone? It's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and we're back to talk about the bait and switch scam machine, possible vaporware, hardware, whatever it is, the Polymega. Now, you might originally remember the Polymega, what was called the Retro Blocks at first, but let me give you a quick rundown on the new update after about 6 months of radio silence following a couple of fairly high profile foot in mouth moments. So, the Polymega is this little system that was originally built as an FPGA based system that you could use for all your retro stuff. You could add additional modules for, say, a NES module with an FPGA piece of hardware inside it, a SNES module with the same, the PS1, Sega Saturn, etc., etc. And of course, originally all of these were boasted as FPGA equipped hardware, which naturally is, short of original hardware at least anyway, the best way to play because it's hardware emulation instead of regular old software emulation. Now, a couple of months back, there was let's call them a couple of big missteps, if you will. These were purposely not communicated and done behind closed doors by Polymega, in which they basically redesigned and rejigged the system a little bit, which completely negated the entire point of this whole system. Now, that main one was the announcement, or the shadily hidden announcement, if you will, that the Polymega would no longer be using FPGA cores and it would all be using standard Intel based hardware, which means it's all software emulated. Now, they of course went on to say one or two possible modules in the future may have an FPGA in the specific module that will only be used for controllers and whatnot, but that's beside the point because, well, they're throwing out hybrid emulation, which is just all a load of crap, really. Naturally, the retro gaming community called all of this out because, well, when you think about it, if it's just a little software emulation box, you can pretty much do that on anything. You can do that on, hell, I've been doing software emulation for some retro stuff since the 90s on my good old Windows 98 Pentium 2 was it 86? Maybe 466 megahertz CPU with 32 MB of RAM. And yes, software emulation. Just like many different types of systems or PCs or extra little boxes or whatever it is nowadays that all use software based emulation. Remember, software based emulation is a fairly brief approximation, if you will, of the whole thing, but it gets a little bit stranger and a little bit worse in the case of Polymega. One of their other fairly high profile ones as well is that they claim to have proper compatibility with Sega Saturn games, something that hadn't properly, at least high-end properly at least anyway, compared to say maybe FPGA or whatever it could potentially do, emulation down to, well, quality for the Sega Saturn. Of course, they boasted about all of this, and what did they do to prove it, if you will, but they used some arcade footage, not Sega Saturn footage. Of course, naturally, the community called them out on their bullshit yet again, and they've pretty much gone radio silent after, well, they kind of screwed themselves over for about 6 months. Now, originally, the Polymega was supposed to launch at some point in 2019. Here we are at the end of December of 2019, and, well, there's still no sign of it. However, there has been a little bit of an update involving this scam piece of hardware, if you will. And they have said that there was a little delay in the Polymega hardware, and it will be due out at some point at the start of 2020. Now, they have said that they hope to have all these units en route to people within 90 days from today, which basically means by the end of February 2020. But again, we have some harrowing news, if you will, that goes with it. Now, accompanying this little bit of information, this little delay announcement and whatnot too, they now are boasting, and yes, you are hearing this correctly, over 90% compatibility. I'm going to say that one more time. They are boasting a compatibility of over 90%. Not 100%, not 95%, not 99%, not 98%, but over 90%. I don't know about you guys, but if I buy we'll just call them clone console, be it FPGA or otherwise, although granted I wouldn't be stupid enough to buy anything that's not FPGA because I can already do software emulation. But if I were stupid enough to buy something like that, I would not be buying it if I knew I couldn't play every game on it. Think about it. Would you buy a PS4 if you knew you could only play 90% of the library? Would you buy an Xbox One if you could only buy or play 90% of the library? Now, I realize some of this can be updated and added over time, but it's not the point, especially after the royal shit show several times over that the Polymega has been. So again, let's briefly go over this. They have switched to standard Intel-based hardware, which uses software emulation, which any computer in the world can do, probably even better. They also moved away from FPGA hardware, so now, software emulation instead of hardware emulation, back to using, let's call it the wrong footage, because, well, they need to bait and switch and lie about the whole deal apparently, and now a delay with a non-100% compatibility. What is the whole purpose and point of this system at this point? People can say, oh, I can just keep one box under my TV. Yeah, but you have one box and you have to put on 5 extra additional modules just to do all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, you are still using software emulation. Guess what? Buy an NVIDIA Shield TV. You can do everything that the Polymega can do and better and cheaper. Think about it. This product, it started off when it was at first announced as the Retro Blocks and when it was first converted over to the Polymega, and their original vision was fantastic. That sounded amazing. FPGA based hardware modules for multiple different systems, including old cartridge based systems, as well as what would have blown my mind, FPGA CD based systems would have been absolutely amazing. However, at the end of the day, when this product, if it ever even does finally launch, you're getting none of that. It's just a standard little piece of shit software emulation box at this point that you can do as it is, better already, or elsewhere cheaper. It's absolutely ridiculous. Who is this for at this point? Because I know there are some people out there that will still buy this and say, oh, it's good enough for me, or it's convenient to have it all as one. You can do the same thing better already. This product doesn't... It just blows my mind. I'm struggling to find words for it. It's such a bad idea about what the finished product is going to turn out as. And honestly, I don't know what is going through someone's mind when they think about this. Because at the end of the day, it's basically just a ROM dumper and software emulator. It's just laughable. Anyway, what do you think about the Polymega, about the Retro Blocks? Were you originally going to buy it but were put off when there was the move away from FPGA hardware? What do you think about the whole system as it is now? What do you think about the delay? Not to mention the software-based emulation and, of course, the laughable non-100% compatibility of a system. I know, you can pretty much hear me face palming at this point. Anyway, let me know all of that good stuff in the comments section below. Hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video. And while you're at it, why not head on over and hit the subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell. Granted, getting a notification from YouTube in current year about a new video upload or a live stream or whatever is a whole other story. But hey, at least you can say you tried, am I right? As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the rest of the videos in my channel.